Also humbly welcome all the students, faculties, and all our esteemed dignitaries present here. We have our eminent speaker, Mr. Kaarthik Sivakumar sir, Head of Department, Dr. K. Rajeshwari ma'am, STW Coordinator, Professor Rahul Patil sir, and CESA Coordinator, Professor Ganesh Deshmukh sir. Now to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Karthik Sivakumar has done his bachelor's from the Birla Institute of Technology and Science, Pilani, and his master's in computer science from the University of Delaware. He is a principal engineer at Cisco Systems, working on network security. He has worked at Cisco for more than 13 years, spanning the areas of routing and forwarding, distributed systems, and trustworthy devices. He also spends his time mentoring and training young engineers. He holds a couple of patents and has published papers and blogs on the security technologies in Cisco's products. Today, he is going to edify us on the topic security and trust. Sir, I welcome you to our college virtually. It is such a great opportunity to be a part of this webinar. Now, I request our Head of Department, Dr. K. Rajeshwari ma'am, to say a few words.
So good afternoon. And my dear students, I'm sure you are excited to listen to Karthik sir. And I take this opportunity to thank ACM for this wonderful speakers we get to mentor our students. I hope this association will strengthen and definitely Karthik sir, you are invited to the campus when everything settles back. Thank you and please go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah.
I now request Mr. Karthik Sivakumar sir to proceed with the talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here. And ma'am, I will definitely take you up on the offer of visiting the campus when everything settles down for sure. I enjoy visiting campuses. Just the last 2 years, unfortunately, or 1.5 years, has been pretty bad that way. But I'm looking forward to it for sure. So thank you for inviting me. I'll start sharing my screen. Let me know if you are able to see my screen. Let me see. Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me try again. How about now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, great. So I am Kaarthik Sivakumar. I'm a principal engineer at Cisco Systems. So I've been, just a little bit of introduction. I've been at Cisco for more than 14 years now, almost 15 years now. And prior to that, I used to work in 3 other companies. Many of them were startups or very small companies. And I used to work a lot in networking. And in the recent past, I've switched over to the security side of the industry because, as I'll explain, you will see, why I made that switch and what the security industry looks like today. So as I said, I've been here in Cisco for more than 14 years. I've been doing mentoring a lot of young engineers who come in, and I got the opportunity to start talking to students in colleges, and I thought that's fantastic because you folks are at the right point in time where you can learn all that's happening, and the industry and the technology outside is such that all you need is a computer now. In those days when I was in college, we didn't have computers. We had to look at the colleges for computers, or it's very difficult to. There's no internet and all that, right? But now all you need is a computer and some internet access, and you can learn a lot of things. And hopefully, what I present to you here, you will see that there's a lot that you can do with just a computer and an internet access. So with that, I'll get started. The topic of my talk is security and trust, and there are 2 different topics that I will explain what they are and some of what's happening in the world today, and how all of you can contribute into this topic. So this will be our agenda. First, I'll talk about attacks, and there's lots of attacks happening recently. We'll definitely talk about that. And then the second thing we'll talk about is about trust. Okay, so let's move to the first thing, attacks. Kevin Mitnick is a hacker from the 80s. I'm sorry, just I'll take a drink of water, please. Sorry about that. Kevin Mitnick is a hacker from the 1980s, right? He was what used to be called a phone phreaker, right? People who could break into phone networks. I mean, that's what we had at that time, right? And then, and he could do a lot of interesting stuff with phones, right? So he's written this book called The Art of Deception, right? And if you get a chance, definitely, go out and read this book. It's all about the human element of security. People always think I'm going to secure my computer, I'm going to secure my network, but it's really the humans that are the weakest links in a security, and we'll talk about that as we go along. But in this book, he had referred to security as a hard, crunchy. If you think about it as a candy, right? If you think about it as it's like one of the gems candy, right? On the outside, it looks like it has a hard shell, but on the inside, it's just very soft. All of our security looks like that today, right? It looks like, we all have passwords on our phone, right? Some numbers, some forms of drawings that you do on your phone, and you think that's good enough security. The moment I break that one particular number, everything is open to me, right? All I have to do is focus on that one password, and once I'm inside, everything is completely open. So that's what security looks like today, right? It looks like a what they call an M&M candidate, which is basically like our gems, right? And then so that just that very thin layer of security, and then inside there's nothing there, right? There's no security. There is no everything is completely open. Everything is just very soft. And this is true not just for us as people, our phones, our computers, but it's also true of companies. It's also very true of governments, right? Many governments are not taking computer security very seriously, right? And so their security looks exactly like this. It feels like they're doing a lot of stuff on the outside, but on the inside, there's not much being done. So there's a lot of inadequate security, and I'll show you, how do we know about it? How do we do it? How do we, deal with all of that now? So over the years, and these are very old headlines, but recently you can see more and more headlines like this of all kinds of security attacks that are happening. And now with all of us staying at home and working from home, there has been a lot of pandemic related security. So people trying to hack your home computers, because our home networks are not as safe as our companies or our colleges networks are. As a result, now that everybody is working from home, one of the key things that's happening is that all that the hackers have to do is target your home, right? The moment they attack your home and they break into your home, then from that point onwards, they can access your company, right? Because your computer is directly in some way through VPN or through some mechanism, it's connected to the company. So if I can hack your company, if I can hack your home and get into your computer, then I can easily log in into your company. And now everybody is also storing so much data on computers and on phones that if you go back and look at, for instance, hospitals, right? All the medical records are on computers. Financial data is all on computers. And if you go back and read the news from the last 1 year, you'll see the number of hospitals that have been targeted by hackers for ransomware attacks, a number of educational institutions targeted for ransomware attacks. Schools were not meant to be online only affairs, right? You were always expecting that everybody would go to school, everybody would go to college. And so the networks in the schools and colleges were really not secure. They were not meant to be. That was not the expectation. But in the last year, because everybody's working from home, the security of all of those of the schools and colleges and many other companies have just been exposed as being of no value at all, right? So we're seeing a lot of these kinds of attacks, and if you look at some of these attacks, they're also happening to head of state. I mean, to presidents and prime ministers are getting attacked, right? When they are getting attacked and they are falling for it, what chance do we stand in front of these attacks? Right. So the CERT is the Computer Emergency Response Team. This is from the US CERT. Indian CERT has also issued an equivalent message saying that we can no longer rely on what are called perimeter devices. Perimeter devices are the devices that we have like a firewall, right? Like a router at the edge of a network. That's not enough. We need more and more security. We need deeper security, right? We need security on our phones, on our laptops, on everything that we carry today. All data centers, they all must be completely secure, right? And that's one of the most important recommendations that have come out recently. So I want to talk a little bit about the types of attacks, right? First is attacking the end system, right? This is very well known to us. It's been happening for a very, very long time. This is basically attacking your computer, right? Previously, we all used to run, Windows-based computers, desktops at home. We were always running antivirus of some kind, McAfee, Norton, all kinds of antivirus we used to run on our computers, because they were being targeted for attack. Right? And then we slowly started to get Linux-based machines, and then Mac OS-based computers, and so on. Initially, we thought they were secure, but slowly, as you would have noticed, there's lots of attacks on Linux. There's a lot of attacks on Mac OS, and then we transitioned over to phones, right? Android phones and Apple's iOS-based phones. Those are also being targeted, right? And now, if you look at it, we have a lot of IoT devices. There are temperature sensors that are connected to the internet. There are agricultural systems that are connected to the internet. All kinds of very, very important infrastructure is connected to the internet or is accessible from the internet, but they're not secure. The IoT devices are so small, so cheap, right? And so nobody wants to put security-related infrastructure in them because the cost of the device will then go up 2 times, 3 times. Right. As a result, all of these IoT devices are, because they're very cheap and they have very, very low power and so on, nobody tries to do any kind of security protection on the IoT devices. And that's a big problem because those IoT devices are now running a significant portion of our lives. Right? All of us, some of us may have these Amazon Echo devices at home, right? Alexa things at home. What kind of protection do they have? Right? Then if you look at manufacturing industries, many industries use these IoT devices for managing the chemical processes. For when you build a car, when you manufacture a car, there are these robotic systems that go through and they do all kinds of things in the manufacturing, in the factories, right? How are those controlled? What if I can go target one of those devices, right? So that's basically attacking the end system. But one of the problems with attacking the end system is that there are now billions of end systems, right? Many, many end systems are there. So you have to go target each one of them. So let's say, I have 10 of you in the classroom. I have to go target each one of you to be able to do something. But what if I go target the router instead, right? All of us are connected to a Wi-Fi router of some kind or some switch, right? Some Ethernet switch of some kind. What if I go target the router or target the Ethernet switch? If I did that, then now I don't have to go target, every computer that is connected. I don't have to target every phone that is connected. All I have to do is just target that single router. Now, in a single router, maybe like 25 devices are connected, let's say. Now, if I target the router, I now have access to all the data from all of the 25 devices, right? So it's a lot easier for me then to figure out what's happening on the network, right? So that's targeting the intermediate devices, routers and switches. The next kind of attack is targeting the traffic itself, right? So what if I don't have to target your router or your switch, but let's say I just want to bring you down, right? I want to bring your system or your entire server down. So what I do is I then start sending something called denial of service attacks, right? I pump so much traffic into your server that your server is not able to respond anymore, right? Denial of service attack. That's the DOS. There's an additional D for distributed denial of service attacks where I go target. First, I collect a zombie sets of devices, right? I go collect 10,000 devices. I force all the 10,000 devices to go target your server, a distributed denial of service attack, right? We'll see a little bit more about that. Then there's, routing attacks, right? I'll explain what a routing attack is. Okay, so we've looked at all these kinds of attacks individual, but you know what? Maybe let's go one step higher, right? What if, all of these devices that we're getting, right, we all are using, they're all manufactured in a factory somewhere, right? They're all manufactured, let's say this laptop and this phones, they're all manufactured in a factory somewhere. And if you think about it, many of our devices are currently manufactured in just one country, right? And it's not a very friendly country. Right? You know who I'm talking about, right? One of our neighbors, not a very friendly country where so much of all of our electronics are being manufactured. But if you think about it, what if I walk into a factory, right, in that country, and while the laptop is being manufactured, I insert a hardware chip into it that through which I can now access that laptop from anywhere in the world, no matter who uses it. Right? So basically, I just walked into a factory where, let's say thousands of laptops are being manufactured every day. I insert a small chip into the motherboard of that that's being manufactured at that point. And then now every laptop that's being manufactured now carries a bad chip. right? It carries a bad chip. And then everybody goes out and buys these laptops or these phones or whatever it is, right? They buy all of them. And then they all go out and they start using them, right? They go out and then they do whatever they want with those laptops and their phones. But because the bad chip has been inserted into those laptops right at the factory, now I can go and target any of those laptops or any of those phones, no matter where it is in the world, right? So that's attacking the supply chain. I go directly to the factory and I insert malicious things directly in the factory. That's for the hardware side of things. There is also software supply chain. I'll talk a little bit about software supply chain. And finally, there's attacking the person, right? And that's the easiest in some ways to target, because human beings are usually the weakest link in any security chain. So you have phishing attacks, social engineering attacks, all kinds of things that I can just send an email and say, click on this link and I'll give you some money or whatever it is, right? And then you have some insurance payments due and all kinds of stuff that comes out, and we just go click on it. It looks like a Gmail login window, right? It looks like a Google login window, and then we give our Google login into it, but it's not really a Google login. Somebody just made a web page that looks like Google, right? But we go given our user ID and password to it, and now the hacker has our Gmail address, right? Once they have your Gmail address, then they can get everything else. Because if you think about it, all of your password resets today, your bank password reset, right? If you go to your bank and say, I forgot my password, and you try to reset your password, they will send an email to your email address, right? What if I target that email address? I get access to your email now. Any password resets will all come to an email that I control, I as a hacker, right? If a hacker controls your email, they can now go reset the password for your bank. They can go reset password for anything, right? That's basically what you can do when you target the person. So phishing attacks and social engineering attacks. I hope that's clear, right? The kinds of attacks have moved on from just being phone and laptop based attacks to infrastructure level attacks, right? Infrastructure level attacks. So why do people do this? What are the motivations for these targets, for these attacks, for hacking, right? The most common one, of course, is ransomware, right? They just want money. It's the oldest profession in the world, right? They basically just, it's like kidnapping somebody and saying, give me money and I'll return them back, right? Now, at this point, they're kidnapping data, right? They encrypt your data and they say, give me money and I'll give you a decryption key, right? Or give me money, otherwise I will release your important data out into the world, right? So it's basically ransomware, right? It's the common motivation. But there are certain other kinds of motivations typically run by countries, right? Especially China, Russia, North Korea, all of these countries, what they try to do is they try to destroy the critical infrastructure of their neighboring countries. Okay, or for some geopolitical advantages. Let's say there's a trade deal going to happen between two European countries, let's say, then China can try to hack one of those countries and figure out what the trade deal is going to look like. The destroying critical infrastructure has been happening a lot. Russia, for instance, is constantly targeting Ukraine's critical infrastructure. They're bringing down their ATMs, right? Banking networks, electricity grid, right? Russia and China have been constantly targeting electricity grids, including India's, right? India's electricity grid has been targeted by China. We know that during all the problems that we were having in the Ladakh area last year, we know that China was constantly attacking our electricity grid, right? So but nothing happened. We were actually well protected, right? We in the last few years, our protections have gone up significantly, and we were able to hold them off. But there's definitely been a lot of attacks that's been happening. So critical infrastructure attacks, geopolitical advantages are the kinds of things that companies and countries do, right? They target other countries for these kinds of attacks. I just want to, this is like a typical network, right? And so normally when I come to colleges to give this lecture in person, I ask people saying, how many of you have a smart TV? And like nowadays, this few years back, it used to be 1 or 2 people, but nowadays I see like almost 50% of the people, they say they have a smart TV, right? And about 20%, 10 to 20% of the people have a smart TV with a webcam on it of some kind, right? If you think about it, if you have a smart TV, especially a smart TV with a webcam, did you know that the smart TVs have a login and a password? None of us tend to know that, right? But if you buy one of the, like the Samsung smart TVs and that kind of stuff, it actually has a login and a password. So you can telnet into your smart TV, right? You can remote login into your smart TV. If you do not change your smart TV's default username and password, then any hacker from the internet can log into your smart TV, right? And that happens a lot. In fact, I'll show you a botnet that basically does that, right? Second thing is these, CCTV cameras, right? You've now probably seen CCTV cameras all over your city, right? In your apartment complexes and your streets and everywhere. In my city, I live in Chennai. And in Chennai, in my city, the streets have CCTV cameras like every 50 meters to 100 meters. There's CCTV cameras all over the place. So the question is, do you know where the video from those CCTV cameras are going? Where are those videos going, right? Who has access to those CCTV cameras? What is the username and password to log into those CCTV cameras? So let's say the video from those cameras are going to some cloud storage, right? Who has access to those cloud storage information? None of us ask these questions. We just immediately say, oh, there's a CCTV camera that, good for our protection, right? But can anybody hack that CCTV camera and figure out what videos are happening through that? And I will show you an example of how to do that. Please don't do it. I'll just give you, I'll show you an example, but please don't try to hack CCTV cameras. And finally, we have things like smart fridges. A lot of smart stuff are happening nowadays, but we don't realize that they all can be hacked very easily, right? So that's a big problem that we face. The next level, of course, like I said, is the routers and switches, and then subsequently going to the cloud. Again, when all these videos and all the data are going to the cloud, we don't look at that and say, who has access to the cloud information? None of us ask that question. We just directly assume it's in the cloud, it must be secure. That's not true. We don't ask that question about who has access, who can hack into the cloud, right? In fact, there's been a lot of people who've been trying to hack into the cloud accounts for celebrities and so on, because they want to get access to photos or emails, all those kinds of things, right? So just so they can embarrass the celebrities, they've been doing a lot of that. And of course, there's people involved, right? So we need security across all of these. We need security at the devices, at the routers, in the cloud, people, everybody. I just want to talk about how these can be attacked. We talked about the smart devices and stuff. You should go look up what is called Mirai. Mirai is a botnet, right? What it does is Mirai basically scans the internet continuously for IoT devices, right? And Mirai has a table of usernames and passwords, right? So it has a huge table of, if you have a Samsung TV, this is the default username, default password. If you have an LG TV, username, password. If you have a smart light, there are lots of smart lights, right? If you have a smart light, this is the default username and password. So it has a table of these 60 or so common default usernames and passwords, and then it just does a brute force attack on the smart light, right? On the smart TVs, smart fridges, and all that kind of stuff. Once it has done that, it will infect them with the Mirai malware. What the Mirai malware does is that it becomes a zombie network. Your smart light is actually now can be used to do a distributed denial of service attack on a country. Imagine that, right? A few years ago, you would not have thought your light is capable of attacking any country, but that's what is happening now. With all these IoT devices, what's happening is TVs, lights, right? Refrigerators, agricultural devices, all of these things are now turning around and they're acting as zombies. They're going around attacking countries, right? That's what is happening today. So that's the Mirai botnet, right? So basically that's what it does. It brute forces into IoT devices and then, installs the Mirai malware. So that's IoT devices. The second kind I talked about is the routing, the basically, the internet routing based hijacking. So BGP is a protocol, Border Gateway Protocol is a very, very critical protocol that's used in building a map of the internet. Just like today, when I have to go from my house to the airport, I get into a car and then I look up Google Maps and I say, okay, go left here, go right here, go left here, and so on. BGP is a protocol that builds a map of the internet. Right? It basically says in order for us to go to google.com, you have to first go to this IP address and this IP address and this IP address and so on. So if you have a program called traceroute, if you go to your command line and then you say traceroute google.com, it will give you a list of IP addresses. Normally it will go up to like maybe 10 or 12 hops, right? And then so each of that is basically like like us using Google Maps and taking a left turn here or right turn there. That's what BGP does. It builds a map of the whole internet. Now imagine if I can change the map of the internet, right? To give a physical example, let's say you want to go from your house to the airport, but the Google Maps decides to reroute you. It reroutes you through some place that has bad people there, right? Who will then rob you, and then they send you to the airport. But that's exactly what's happening on the internet. Right? When they illegitimately take over BGP, like for instance, this happened in 1997. This was an accident, right? Accidentally, somebody did this, and they rerouted all the entire internet traffic into a single server, right? This is accident, but now it's no longer accident, right? Countries like Russia and China, if you look at this, it's 20 years apart, right? It's still happening. We have no way to block this at this point. So countries like Russia and China, they're redirecting your web traffic. So if a HDFC Bank website is in Mumbai, for instance, you go to your computer, and then instead of going from your house to Mumbai, it actually goes from your house to Russia, to China, to Mumbai. And that's because countries like Russia and China are rerouting traffic. This also happens with the other very unfriendly neighbor, Pakistan, which does this a lot, actually. They regularly try to reroute internet traffic through themselves. And part of the reason for doing that is they try to steal a lot of financial information, right? So as you can see, it says here very clearly, another country has hijacked your internet traffic. Right? This happens a lot, actually. So nowadays they don't hijack, you don't have trouble accessing, but you do still see traffic getting rerouted very, very incorrectly. They go through, again, North Korea, Russia, China, all these kinds of countries before they come back to India to go to your bank. This happens a lot. So another kind of attack is now critical infrastructure. We talked about this. So we have in Tamil Nadu, we have a nuclear plant at Kodamkulam. The Kodamkulam nuclear plant was attacked, possibly by China, or we think, right? The really good part about Kodamkulam was that their administrative network, which is connected to the internet, was not connected to the nuclear network that handles all the nuclear devices and stuff, right? So as a result, the attack on the administrative network did not, cause any kind of impact on the nuclear side at all. That is very good security, right? But there's constant attacks, right? So one of the examples that we have here is a malware called Stuxnet, Stuxnet. It was created by Israel and the US because Iran's nuclear program was becoming very strong. Iran is starting to build very, very powerful nuclear weapons and that kind of stuff. So basically, Israel and the US, they built something called Stuxnet. And what Stuxnet did was it would target specific Siemens devices, right? Siemens has a centrifuge. So basically, the centrifuges are how you separate out, the radioactive uranium from the regular uranium, right? And so you basically, through the centrifuge, you separate out all these, radioactive uranium that you can use to build a bomb, right? What Stuxnet did was it silently made those centrifuges go much, much faster, right? Then, and the Iran's nuclear program, they did not realize that the centrifuges are going much faster. The centrifuges started to go super fast, and then they just physically broke down, right? The centrifuges just physically broke down. This basically set back Iran's nuclear program by like 10 or 15 years. So this is a targeted attack by Israel and the US to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Right. So initially, when it was done, nobody knew who did it, but later on, it was discovered to be Israel and the US. Right. So these kinds of attacks are happening a lot, right, and have happened in the past, and they're continuing to happen now. So again, like I said, Russia keeps targeting Ukraine. Ukraine's physical infrastructure is constantly under attack. So. Software supply chain, we talked about hardware supply chain in the factory. Software supply chain is very similar. Today, what we do is whenever we want some new software, we just basically go to the internet, search for it, download it. We don't even understand who wrote that software. Where is it coming from? Is there any malware in the software? We don't even think about it. If you have to do some college project, for instance, what you do is you just go to GitHub and somebody has already some library or something that they may have a Python module, something. You just directly download it and you use it in your college project. But that's very bad because you don't know who wrote that module, right? That Python module, you don't know what it does. You don't know if it is collecting some information from your computer and sending it to, again, China or something, right? So we don't know all of that stuff, but we're just simply using them. So that's called software supply chain. In the recent past, we've had many attacks in the software supply chain, especially last year, right? The SolarWinds attack was a very big one, where again, it was Russia first who targeted SolarWinds, and SolarWinds software is used by many government agencies in the US. And what Russia did was they basically targeted SolarWinds, and they modified the software right inside of the company's servers, right? So now all the software shipped by that company had malware already inserted into it. So now Russia did not even have to target the government entities to try to hack them. What they did was they targeted the company that was building the software. Just like in the hardware, how you target the factory that is building the hardware. In this case, Russia targeted the companies building the software, inserted the malware into the software while it was being coded, right? So now the company shipped software that was already preloaded with malware. Right. So this is happening a lot now. So if you ever, the other thing I see a lot of people in colleges tend to do is download VPN clients for your phone. Don't do that, because VPN clients can read everything that you're sending on the internet, right? Free VPN softwares are the primary source of malware infection for your phones especially, right? What the free VPN software does is it has access to every traffic. It can decrypt all of the HTTPS. The whole point of HTTPS traffic is to encrypt the traffic between your device and, let's say, the bank's website. But when you install a free VPN software, what it does is it can intercept the encrypted traffic, decrypt it, right? Look at all the data, including your bank balance, your username and password. It can collect all of that information. Then it can re-encrypt the data and send it to your bank. That's the whole point of the VPN software. And so if you install a free VPN software on your phone, that VPN software is collecting all of your private information that you think is getting sent in an encrypted way. Right? There is no protection. You think you're sending encrypted data, but you're not, because the VPN software is hijacking all of that. So I've noticed this in college campuses a lot, that the free VPN softwares are being used on your phones. Please don't do that. Right? Sometimes it's worth paying for software, especially for these kinds of software. Okay, so I talked about how to go identify IoT devices and then hack them. Just like we have Google as a search engine, there is a search engine called Showdown, Shodan, Showdown.io. Right, Showdown.io. If you're online currently, you can go type this in your browser. You can go to Showdown.io. It is like Google for IoT devices. The search engine for Internet of Things is what they call it, right? So you can go search for whatever you want. And what I did was I searched for webcam. So you can see this is the search I gave in Showdown. I said country is IN is India, and then I said give me all the webcams that you can find in India. Okay, it'll find all the webcams that are connected to the internet, right? And it gave me a whole bunch of webcams. Okay, one of these webcams in Delhi is, not only is it completely connected to the internet, but I have full access to the video from that webcam. Sorry, as you can see, I can see whatever the webcam is seeing. The person who installed that webcam probably thought he was being very safe by installing the CCTV camera. But in reality, what he has done is he's given access to the entire world to see whatever the camera is seeing, right? Which means that if I want to rob that house, if I want to go steal from that house, I have full access to the camera. I can see when people come and go. I can see when the house is empty, and I can steal from them. And so on, right? So basically, all of this is easily available. It's all free. Showdown, you don't even have to pay for it, right? Showdown.io is just absolutely free, right? So yeah, this is what it does. You can go basically see this is a camera in Delhi, right? Somebody's just put it up on the internet. Similarly, with Showdown, what else can I do? Look, I'm just searching for traffic lights. There are traffic lights in traffic signals in Korea that are connected to the internet, right? I just I did a search for traffic signals and I got them, right? But here's the thing, what Showdown does is also tells you what the traffic signal is vulnerable to, right? The traffic light is running a HTTP server. Okay, the traffic light is running a HTTP server, and they have not patched the HTTP server. This is one of the biggest problems. We don't upgrade our software very regularly, right? Because the HTTP server is not patched, I basically have HTTP server on a traffic light that is easily hacked. So as you can imagine, I can sit in India or I can sit anywhere in the world and I can hack a traffic light in Korea. right? Which means I can turn the traffic light to whatever color I want, right? And Showdown allows you to do this free from anywhere in the world. So this is the kind of things that are available today, right? And you don't even have to be a genius to figure it out, right? You can use Shodan to get all these traffic lights and all that stuff, and then you just have to go look. So this is the vulnerability that it has. You can go find a script that will hack this vulnerability. So now Shodan to find the device, Google search to find a script that will hack that vulnerability. You put them together, you are now a hacker, right? And you didn't even have to use your brain, right? It's just so straightforward now, so simple now to go hack anything you want, right? Please don't do it. Please don't do this, right? But it's just an example to show, what can be done so easily. So we all think that hackers are must be doing amazing stuff. They're reverse engineering this and they're doing encryption and cryptography and mathematics and all that stuff. In reality, majority of the hacks are so silly. There's so many more types, right? Government monitoring in many countries, social engineering, we talked about all kinds of stuff. So securing systems is very, very hard. I think ultimately that's what we're learning, right? Securing systems are extremely hard. Okay, there's too many moving parts. There's this complex hardware, software, and people interactions. It's become very difficult for us to secure systems. So which means that an attack is almost always going to be successful because we're not ready for it, right? And an attack is probably going to happen, and if it does happen, it'll be very likely be successful. We have to protect all the holes. A hacker has to find just one. That's the key. So you can read this comic strip, right? And at this point, we're all thinking, hey, maybe I'll just encrypt it, put some big key, right? Or there's all this. I read about cryptography, right? I'm going to do this massive encryption. I'm going to do all of this stuff, and I'll have my password. The password is only in my head, right? I'm not going to tell the password to anybody. I'm only going to put it in my head. Hey, but look at this. All this person has to do is beat you up, right? You think to yourself, nobody can break my cryptography, but they can break you, right? They can beat you enough, so you just give them the password, right? That's basically what this is saying. So ultimately, humans are the weak links in everything, right? And you've probably seen this in a lot of movies as well. So what is it that we can do? What we can do is we can make it very expensive for the attacker to hack you. So let's say you carrying around 10,000 rupees in your pocket, right? If somebody on the street knows that, and all they have to do is come and beat you up 2-3 times, and they can take the money, they will do it because the cost of beating you up is much less than what they gain from you, which is 10,000 rupees. Right? But let's say you have 10,000 rupees, you put it in a very safe container and you're carrying the container with you, right? If it costs the person who's trying to rob from you, if it costs them 9,500 rupees to open the container, and and there's only 10,000 rupees in the container, there's no value in targeting you, right? They only gained 500 rupees, but they spent 9,500 rupees and they gained 500 rupees, right? So all of our goal is targeted towards making it very, very difficult and very expensive for a hacker to target you, right? None of the security things that we have on our systems by themselves can stop a hacker. But what can stop a hacker is layers and layers of security, right? If you've seen all these Hollywood movies where these guys try to go break into a casinos, I saw this sometime back. I forget the name of the movie. They try to break into a casino because there's like $150 million of of money in there, right? And so and the casino has these layers and layers and layers of security. They have to to the point where they even have to cut out the power to the whole city, right? This is Las Vegas, I think, right? They had to cut the power to all of Las Vegas and to all the casinos and everything there in order to enter this vault, right? If in order to do that, they probably have to spend, let's say, $10 million, right? And they're getting back $150 million. But let's say they had to spend $140 million to do all of this stuff, and they only got $150 million back. They would not do it. There's no value in doing that, right? It's exactly the same. So today our security looks like this. This is an actual bank vault from 1905, right? But what we want is something like this, right? The one on the right is actually used in a European bank, as you can see in Paris. That's what you want, right? Today you do not want the vault on the left. That's not secure. Our computer systems must be just like that. Layers and layers and layers of security that makes it expensive for the attacker to exploit you. right? They may still be successful, but they need to be motivated enough, right? So you must have a lot of very, very good things for them to hack you if they have to go through all of these things to hack you. I just want to say, since you're all in college, you may be thinking, hey, what can I do? There's a bunch of roles you can play for sure. Black hat is the hacker. Please don't be a black hat, right? These are bad guys, right? They try to find all these holes and then they try to target them. But there's a blue team, right? They also try to find all these holes, but they try to protect from those holes, right? That's the goal. The red teams are the ones who are constantly finding holes, right? So they basically act like they are black hat, and they try to find these holes so that they can let people know. Those of us who are building products, I build products all day long. So those of us who are building products have to think about the security of those products, right? And if when you finish your studies and you go to work and you have to, let's say you go to join a company, please think about this a lot. Any product that you build must be secure as much as possible, right? As much as possible, you should try to secure it. Do not try to say, I'll build the product first and then I'll add security later. It never happens, right? Finally, there are the investigators. So bad things have happened. Somebody's hacked. They go in and they try to figure out what happened. How did the hackers come in? How did they figure it out? All of that kind of stuff. Okay, that covers the security part of the presentation, right? I want to talk about the trust part. What is trust? Now, we talked about this, right? Security is very difficult, right? It is the goal. It is absolutely a goal. But it's also a very perfect state. We can never achieve that, right? It's very difficult for us to achieve absolute security because there is just so many moving parts, including people. People are a big problem when it comes to dealing with computer security, right? But trust is something that we all understand, right? Trust is something that we all know. So, for instance, if you look at the real world, I have, let's say, 5 friends, right? For each of those 5 friends, I know what I can trust them with. So one friend, I can give him my car keys. I know he will not cause any damage to the car. He's a very, he will take care of it very well, and he will, make sure that nothing happens. He'll drive very carefully. He'll give the car, he'll take the car. He'll do whatever he has to do, come back and give it to me, right? I know I can trust him with my car keys, right? Another friend, I would not even trust him with a cycle, right? Because I know he's going to break it. He's just not careful about it, right? Now, if somebody new comes to me and says, can you give me your car keys, right? What would I do at that point? So I would go to the friend. I would go to all of my friends, so these 5 close friends that I have. I would go to all of them and say, do you know this new guy who just came and is asking me for my car keys? Do any of you know him? And those 5 friends will say, I don't know him. Or they'll say, yes, I know him. He's this, he's a, cousin of this guy's uncle of, whatever, right? He'll basically form a relationship chain. This is LinkedIn, right? Basically, what we're doing is we're doing physical LinkedIn. Right? We basically form this chain of people that we know, right? And that's how we build trust. So when my closest friend tells me that a new guy can be trusted, then I trust that new guy, right? So we form chains, right? And that's a very important thing that we do in physical life. So how do we use that same concept on a computer? That's very important. So establishing that trust. So what you see on the left-hand side is a factory. Like we said, that's where, let's say, something gets made. On the right-hand side corner is the company that uses whatever comes out of the factory. And in the middle is a transport. So let's say something comes from the factory, Amazon ships it to you, to your home. Let's say whatever you received at home is broken, right? So this is what happens. If you receive something that's broken, what do you do? Who do you blame? Do you blame the guy who, at the factory? Do you blame Amazon? Do you blame the post office? Who do you blame, right? No matter what you say, the first 2 times you may say it's Amazon's problem, right? But if, let's say, continuously you're always getting bad stuff from the same producer, you're going to stop buying from that company, right? And that's what happens all the time, right? We trust, ultimately our trust is with the manufacturer, right? We want to trust the manufacturer. So I want to show you an image. So the trust is between these two, right? I want to show you an image. What do you see at the bottom is, I work at Cisco. We make a lot of routers and switches and firewalls, all kinds of stuff, security products and all kinds of things. What's happening at the bottom is that, there is a spy, the US spy agency. The US spy agency intercepted our packages that we were sending to our customers, and then they inserted chips into it, or they modify the software in there so that any company that uses our product can be immediately hacked. This is an example of just like the supply chain attack, right? Except that we as a company did not know that they were doing this. We were just shipping our product to our customers, and the spy agency intercepted them, and then they inserted all of these things and then shipped it out, right? So now tell me, if we basically, when a customer finds this out, right, when a customer finds out that our product that we ship to them has been intercepted and some bad thing has been done in transit, they're not going to blame the spy agency. I mean, of course they'll try to say the spy agency did the bad thing, right? But they are going to come to us as Cisco and say, why did you guys not create a secure system? Right, and that's a very important thing. So this picture, by the way, you can go see it. It's public domain. I'm not showing you any secrets. I'm not showing you my company's secret, right? This is public domain, right? And this happened. So now Cisco, we take a very, very strong position on this, right? We built amazing amount of security into our product so that nobody can intercept it and do all these kinds of things today. Right? But there's a certain point in time when this did happen. So our customers lose trust in Cisco, right, in my company, right? And so we had to do something about it. And this is how trust works, right? Ultimately, you care about the person who told you that information, who told you that everything is okay, right? That's very important. So that's how we want to build trust. So the questions that you should be asking, even you should be asking, is how do I know my device is running only the software that you think it's running, right? If you have a phone, how do you know that your phone is running exactly what you think it's running? Today, what has happened is we don't even know what our phone is running. There's so much software running on our phones and our laptops that we don't even know what is the correct set of software that should be running, right? The second thing is, how do I know my device has not been physically altered since it was built? Okay, from the factory onwards, right? Did anybody? So I left my computer and I went to go get some coffee or tea, right? And then I come back. How do I know that nobody hacked my computer since I left it there? That's a very important question to ask, right? So these are two important questions. How do I know that I understand all of the software that's running and it's running exactly what I think it's running? And the second thing is, how do I know that my physical device has not been altered in any way? Right? Very important questions to be asked. So I just want to talk about what is called chain of trust. So we built this chain of trust in real life, right? Like I said, I have 5 very close friends, and then they have some more friends, and they have some more friends, and effectively the LinkedIn model, right? And then we build this, this long chain. We want to do something to our software and hardware as well. So in the case of Linux, there's the Linux kernel, right? And then the Linux kernel is the one that starts all the Linux applications. So we should be able to trust the Linux kernel, right? We should be able to. We don't know. Can we trust the Linux kernel? Did the Linux kernel get modified? In fact, recently, even the Linux project they've noticed that there's been a lot of attacks on them, right? Malicious attacks on them. So how do I know that I can trust the Linux kernel? So there is the bootloader. Grub is the bootloader for Linux, right? And so Grub should verify Linux and make sure that Linux has not been hacked. That's what you want, right? When the box boots up, you want to make sure that the kernel has not been modified in any way. It's exactly the same kernel that Linus Torvalds himself built, let's say, or Ubuntu built, right? Or Red Hat built. But here's a problem. I can now hack Grub, right? And then I can make Grub say that Linux is good. No matter Linux has been hacked or not, right? I can always hack the Grub and say Linux is good, Linux is good. So even when I hack the kernel, Grub will always say, no, nothing is a problem. Everything is fine. Linux is doing good. I can make it say that, right? So now what you have to do is you have to verify Grub all the time. Who's going to verify Grub? Your BIOS can verify Grub. But how do I now extend the problem again? Right? How do I verify BIOS, right? Maybe Intel can do it, but how do I verify Intel? Did somebody hack the processor? I don't know. So we need to form a chain of trust, right? This is where in our physical life, we will always have exactly like 1 or 2 friends whom we trust very, very well, right? We know at no point in time are they ever going to do something bad to us. It could be friends, it could be family, somebody with whom we can have a lot of trust. There is an equivalent of that in the computer world. It's called trust anchor, right? A trust anchor or a root of trust is a very, very small piece of software. We know exactly what it runs. We know it cannot be hacked, and we trust it, right? And then this trust anchor will verify everything in the chain, right? The trust anchor will verify the BIOS. The BIOS will then verify Grub. Grub will verify kernel. Kernel will verify the applications, right? So all of our phones for a long time have been carrying this tiny chip in there, right? This chip verifies everything else that's happening on your phone or on your laptop, Right? You can go look it up. It's called, on Google, it's called Titan. Microsoft has something called Cerberus, and Apple has something called T2. Right? All of these very small chip. That the only role of that chip is basically to say your next level is running fine. It just does a verification, and that chip itself should not be hackable. Right? That's the important thing. This is how we build a chain of trust, and that's how we build, just like in real life, how we build relationships. We try to build similar relationship in the hardware and software world as well. Okay, so now let's say somebody comes and asks you your car keys. You don't know the person, right? They come and ask you for your car keys, and you ask them, "Can I trust you?" What are they going to say? They will always say that yes, you can trust them. There's no point in asking that question, because at no point is somebody going to tell you, no, you cannot trust me. That's not going to happen, right? They will always say that, yeah, absolutely, you can trust me. But this is the question that we ask our systems all the time, right? Your phone. Would you trust your phone to tell you that it is trusted? Would your phone tell you if somebody hacked it? Right? So we have to ask these kinds of questions. And this is where, you folks can really help. We're doing the research, we're doing, a lot of the work that the industry is trying to do, right? These are all very new industries that we're working in. So we need something called integrity visibility, right? We need something called integrity visibility. We need to be able to see the integrity of the devices that we're using, right? We need something that says, yes, relax, everything is fine, there's no problem, right? So that's important. So there's a group called Trusted Computing Group, and they have created this chip called Trusted Platform Module, TPM. So recently, if you've read about the Windows 11, that's going to come out soon, Windows 11 says that all devices, all hardware must have a TPM chip in them. Right. So this is what that is, right? The TPM is a trusted platform module. What the TPM does is that it verifies everything on your system. It can verify BIOS, just like we talked about the chain of trust, right? It verifies everything. So the way it does that, this is on Linux. The way it does that is it has something called PCR, platform control registers, right? And these PCRs basically have a hash value. These hash values are, basically they compare against what are known as manufacturer good value, known good values, KGVs, right? Known good values. So what this TPM chip does is that it regularly, computes hashes of your device. It checks the BIOS, it checks the BIOS configuration, it checks the master boot record, it checks your hard drive, it checks your applications, all kinds of stuff. It regularly checks them constantly, and it compares them to known good values, right? And that way, just like with real life, right, we can start to build some trust in our devices. It doesn't mean that your devices cannot be hacked. And this is where we need to understand the difference between security and trust. Right? Security is about protecting your device, right? You should definitely protect your device as much as you can. Can you protect your device 100%? Most probably not, right? Very likely you cannot protect your device 100%. But what does trust tell you? Your trust tells you basically, is that device been hacked? Is my device, or has my device been hacked or not? Right? So at least, even if I don't have 100% security, I should at least be able to tell that somebody hacked my device. Right? So the equivalent of this in the physical world, let's say, can I protect my house all the time? No, right? I can put big locks. I can keep a dog. I can do all kinds of stuff. But when somebody does enter the break into the house, right? They break the lock, all the stuff. There is an alarm that goes off, right? When they open the door and they don't, or they try to break open a window, an alarm goes off. What the TPM does is exactly like that, right? It's like an alarm system. So that way, what happens is, that even if your house is not fully secure, if somebody breaks in, then the alarm system will go off and it will warn you that somebody broke in. And that's how you can build trust in your system, right? That's very important. So there is a book, free book, a Practical Guide to TPM 2.0. I strongly recommend reading this as well, right? Because you will understand how we do security, or how do we do trusted platform today, right? And the TPM chip, or the equivalent of the TPM chip, runs on all of our devices today, your phones, your laptops. There is something in there that provides this kind of security. So it'll be very useful to understand how this works. Okay, so that covers the security part, where we looked at all kinds of hacks and what happens today. And then we looked at the trust part, right? So I just want to summarize. Securing a system is very, very hard, right? There's too many moving parts, there's lots of stuff happening. It's very difficult to secure a system. But what we can all do is we can make it very expensive for an attacker, right? Don't let an attacker easily hack your system. That's what we should all try to do, right? When you build software, try to follow some very good practices. When you same thing with downloading software, don't download random software and use them. You don't know what they've been built with, right? You don't know if there's any malware in there, especially around VPN clients. Please don't do that, right? Pay for the software, right? Pay for the software so that you get legitimate software that has not been hacked. I know a lot of people tend to like download pirated versions of Photoshop and that kind of stuff, right? Or video games and all that. The problem is all of that contain malware, right? Then if you use the computer to do work with the pirated version of Photoshop or pirated version of the game, then also use the same computer to access your bank account, then your bank account is now compromised, right? So that's very important. Don't download random software, right? Build trusted systems, right? We looked at a few ideas of trust, right? TPM chip. This is an area of very strong research, right? And so if you're interested in doing, like a project or thesis and that kind of stuff, this will be a fantastic area of research, right? And you should definitely look at it. If you go out to the industry and try to build products, you should definitely think about trust and security when you do it. Right. Last thing I'll say is build auditable systems. What are auditable systems? It's a system where everything that you do, there is a log, right? A log is created saying that I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and so on, right? So when you have an auditable system, then you can always go back and figure out what happened. The most important thing is not that you should try to prevent an attack as much as you can. But if an attack does happen, that attack must not be undetected. Right, you must always have the ability to detect any kind of attack that happens. And that's a big problem today. Attacks happen, we only discover the attack a year later and accidentally discover the attack a year later or 2 years later, right? That's a problem. So we should at least be able to detect attacks if you're not able to fully secure a system. So that's my call to action. All of you, all of us, right? All of us must care about the security of our systems that we use. We should all think about what is it you're using. What is it that you're downloading? What happens on our devices? This is our responsibility, right? If we as engineers, especially computer science and computer engineers, if we do not take care, how do we expect common people who do not even understand any of these things? How can we expect them to care about it? Right? It is our responsibility as computer science and computer engineers to help the common people, right? And so let's do that. Let's start with ourselves first. Prevent us getting hacked first, and then we can help everybody else as well. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The link to ask questions is provided in the chat box. Kindly ask all questions there.
Okay, I see. Somebody's asked a question, what is the Metasploit project? So Metasploit is just a project that gives you, tools to hack, right? So Metasploit is interesting that way, right? It's basically, if you want to learn how to hack systems, you can do that. But Metasploit also, the tools can also be used to do real hacking. So please don't, you use it carefully, right? Use it very carefully. You can definitely learn hacking with Metasploit, but be careful about using it in real life. Sorry, yeah. So hey, so are the questions coming on the chat window here? I see there's also a question there about Google Titan, I think there as well, right? So let me answer a few, right? What is Google Titan exactly? Google Titan is again a small chip, right? That tries to verify the trustworthiness of the system. Right, Titan exists, I think, definitely on the data center chips as well as in some of the, I think probably in the Pixel phones, right? Google Pixel phones have this small chip there, and that's used for, like I said, verifying that your phone has not been hacked. Right, so that's very important. How important is vulnerability management for educational organizations? Extremely important, right? I mean, educational organizations like universities, for instance, right, is where a lot of people have critical information about their personal life, right? And it is also the place where most of us don't know or don't understand how this computer security works and so on. So it's important that vulnerability management is done. In particular, right, the educational institutions always have financial crunch, right? They don't have enough money to secure systems and so on. So vulnerability management then becomes very critical. It is important to understand what are the problems in the system and how to protect and so on, because you have to think about how to spend the limited money that you have, what kind of software and so on, right? So that becomes very important. What shall we do if system is under ransomware attack? Well, you have two choices: pay the money or hope that you have a backup system, right? So I take backups very, very frequently, right? So that way, if anything were to happen to my computer, I have a backup. I don't need to pay the ransom. I just wipe my computer and I reinstall from backup, right? So that's basically, that's all the options that you have, right? Or you pay them, right? There's no other option that you have there. Can anyone check? I think WhatsApp chat, is it? Not really. Nobody can check WhatsApp chat. It is encrypted. So that's part of the reason why we are seeing, as I understand it, obviously from what I read in the news, apparently a lot of the criminal enterprises are all doing, using WhatsApp for communication. As of now, there's no way to figure out or check the WhatsApp chats. Can we use ML to monitor normal things that are mostly? Yes. So machine language based threat analysis is a big thing, right? Definitely happening. If we don't have, there's not a lot available in product today, but definitely it can be done. But the problem with machine language based thing is that it is not that simple, because first of all, in order for machine learning to work, right, we have to, as human beings, we have to understand it. Only when we understand it can machine learning. Only when we understand something can we help the machines also to learn, right? So that's an interesting area that is definitely being researched at this point. Is there a way to safeguard IoT devices that we use? Yes, first of all, every device that you have, please try to get away from the default username and password, right? That's very important, actually. So a lot of us buy devices, then like routers at home, right? We just use the default username and password. SSID passwords are very, very simple. And start there, right? Start with that. And the second thing is, if there are any two-factor authentications, please enable multi-factor authentication, which means OTP and all that kind of stuff, right? I think it's very important. So. Okay, so that was that. And then what are the steps to get started in the field of security? I showed a few roles. I showed a few roles, right? And basically, there are a few certifications you can do. Certified ethical hacker is a very, very good first step, right? They teach you about the ethics of hacking as well as a lot of the hacking itself, right? So you do some theory, you get a certification, and then there is a lab test as well. So when you finish the lab test, you know how to use basic tools, right? Tools of hacking, all of that stuff you get to use. So that is a very good place to start. So my suggestion is start there. Start with the CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, and then after that, there's lots and lots of other certifications that you can do depending on what kind of interest that you have. Okay, suppose you've clicked on some links which says get car. So no, so it really depends on what the link did, right? Sometimes when you just click a link itself, you've given up data. Sometimes you click a link, it only takes you to a web page, and there it asks you to enter some username and password, like your Google username and password. So it really depends on what the link did, right? And sometimes you don't even have to click on a link, right? There are certain kinds of malware that just the fact that they reached your computer is good enough for it to target. So it really depends on the kind of link that you have. How to protect your mobile data? Be very careful what you're clicking on, right? I think that's basically. I don't have any. This is a human thing, right? There are websites that can tell you the reputation of links, right? So Cisco itself, for instance, has a website that you can go look up. If you give it the link that you got, right, it'll tell you what the reputation. It'll tell you if it is malware and so on. So do that kind of research, right, first, and then don't just click on random things. I think that's basically it. Indian IT department asks WhatsApp to allow origin message. The ethical part of it, I can't answer, right, because I don't know, right? Secure, we don't even know what it means, right? I mean, in the sense that, how does WhatsApp, one of the key parts of WhatsApp is that it's end-to-end encrypted. How do you even know how do you even look for origin message, right? Because what I can do is, rather than forwarding, I can copy paste. Right, when I do that, then the origin is now changed. So it's not directly doable, right? It's possible to do it, but once you do, then the end-to-end encryption is broken. At which point anybody would be able to hack into WhatsApp, which is not something you want either. So yeah. Do paid VPN sell your data? Sometimes they do. Yes. So you need to find a very good VPN provider for sure, right? A lot of the VPN, the paid VPNs, at least they will tell you what they do with your data. They have these terms and conditions. You need to read the terms and conditions. Some of them do sell your data. There are some that keep your data for law enforcement, and there are some that don't keep any data at all. Totally anonymous, right? Completely anonymous VPNs are there, for which you have to pay a lot of money, but they're completely anonymous. They don't even keep any logs of the fact that you used them. Very good. So, okay. When anyone hack or Instagram, yeah, very difficult again, right? I mean, Instagram, the company itself is finding it very difficult to figure out. So when hackings happen, that's why we have the forensic and malware analysts, right? So they're like the police of this world, right? So they try to figure out who did this. It's not easy. They based on what kind of hack they use, they try to usually come up with something saying, oh, this could be Russian, or this could be Chinese, or North Korean, or Pakistani or something, right? They try to do all of that kind of stuff, but it's very difficult. I mean, it's only heuristics. It's only a guess mostly. You can't really tell. So, what do I specialize in exactly? So my goal is secure product, building secure products. Right? I work in the firewall and content security team, which means that I try to protect. At Cisco, I try to protect, and I build products that basically protect your traffic. Right? Network security is what I do. Yeah. I sign in with Google. It does not give away access to your Google account, but Google will then know what all you do. It really depends on how much information you want to give to Google. Right? Are you okay with Google knowing that you're accessing all these websites? Because then Google will use it for ads. So that's the thing. It really depends on how comfortable you are with Google. Yeah, my LinkedIn is on LinkedIn. I mean, if you just go search for me, right, you'll find it. I'm happy to connect, right? Yeah, definitely send me a connect request. How to jam a jammer? That's a little bit of an open question, right? It depends on what kind of jammer and radio. I'm not very familiar with the radio kind of stuff, so very hard for me to answer. Sorry. You'll have to find a radio kind of guy. Oh, thank you. Yeah, can I trust that? Yes. So have I been pawned? What it does is it basically gets a list of hacked passwords, right? So they have the database behind that has the actual passwords or hashes of passwords or usernames that have been hacked, right? So yeah, I think you can trust it. If have I been pawned says that you show up in some password database, most likely you show up in that password database. See, Pegasus is one of those malwares where you don't have to do anything, right? It's basically somebody sends you a message, and you can easily just the fact that you received the message means that your phone has now been hacked, right? Again, it goes back to the kind of security that phones and laptops and all these Pegasus is no different from like I said, a Russian or a Chinese hacker, right? It's exactly the same. It's just that Pegasus is selling it like a regular product, right? As opposed to a Chinese hacker who's hacking for the purposes of hacking, right? That's the difference. That's why everybody's upset. But just because, I mean, the thing is, is the Pegasus thing moral or immoral? It's very hard to tell, right? I mean, sometimes like spying as a profession has been around for, I don't know, since Roman times, right? There's always been spies going out and trying to figure out what the other side is doing. The question is, who are you spying, right? And what are the technique you use is basically, it doesn't matter, right? Because if not by phone, then by laptop, by email, there is just so many other ways to do it. The question is always about who are you using it against, and I have no answer to that question. So if you use it, so even if you use the incognito window, Google can still know because they track IP addresses. IP address is not prevented by incognito mode. VPNs, very good VPNs can prevent. VPN plus the incognito mode can help stop Google from knowing who you are. Okay. Yeah, very difficult, man. I mean, this is what a lot of people are trying to build, saying, is anybody spying on me, right? So that's a very difficult thing. We need levels in hardware. We need, all kinds of, that's the whole point about the trust part of the presentation, right? The goal is really to figure out if somebody's hacked us. It's not that easy. We need layers and layers because look, the first thing, when I try to hack you, right, the first thing I would do is I would set a message that says, or wherever if you have a software that basically tries to figure out if you've been hacked, right? When I hack you, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify that software to say that you've not been hacked, right? That would be my goal, right? Very first thing I would do on hacking you is to figure out if you have an antivirus, and I'll turn off the antivirus. That happens all the time. So it is difficult, right? And yeah, so we're all trying to figure out how to make this happen. Just keep the phone down, right? Look, don't give out basic information about yourself on a phone call. Your bank account, your OTP, your PIN codes. If anybody calls you saying they're calling you from a bank, keep the phone down and you call the bank, right? You call your relationship manager and say, I got this call. Is this real? Right? That's how you deal with it. Do not answer. Do not say anything, right? I'll say, if somebody calls and I'm calling you from your bank, say, okay, thank you. You keep the phone down. You call the bank and say, I got a phone call from your bank. What is the information, right? Turn it around. So, yeah, there's no solution. That's the reason why Microsoft itself has an antivirus, right? Your Mac has an antivirus. Use your system antivirus as opposed to buying additional antivirus. That's what I would say. Because Microsoft Defender will do a much better job than McAfee or Norton or any of those things. Yes, modern apps can access all kinds of data. That is the whole point, right? I mean, sometimes it's worth it to pay money. If you really want access to some video game, right, buy it, because anything that's been modded, we don't know how the else they've been modded, right? We don't know what they're doing to your computer. So yes, definitely. No software protects a PC completely. It really depends on your use case also, right? If you were to constantly see, the thing is, malwares are constantly changing, right? And no matter how fast these softwares try to catch on malware, right, they're not going to be fast enough to pick up on all the new malware that is coming. So yeah, there's no such thing as protecting PC completely. Yeah, so 2 to 3 year-old, a lot of the thing is, okay, here's the thing, right? With WhatsApp, what happens is, okay, let's say I change my phone. When I change my phone, how is WhatsApp able to give me all my chat back, right? Or Telegram or any of these things? How do they give me all my chat when I just change my phone? It's because they have it, right? It's all in their servers. It's just that they've encrypted it in some way, but I can force them to give it back, right? So yeah, that basically you first of all, if you worry about these kinds of things, and you have to figure out first of all what kind of chat apps you're using and all that kind of stuff, right? So So yeah, it's all there on somebody's server. They use it for giving ads. They use it for all kinds of stuff. So DuckDuckGo is okay. If you care about privacy, definitely use DuckDuckGo instead of Google, right? If you don't want to give Google all your information. But of course, accuracy of results are definitely, worse with DuckDuckGo compared to Google, right? It'll get better. But if your goal is privacy more than accuracy, then yeah, DuckDuckGo is much better. Thank you very much.
So I think that was all the questions.
Okay.
So now, sir, if you can, let's switch on our camera for a group photo.
Sure. Hang on a minute. Let me turn it on.
I request everyone to turn on the cameras as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I, on behalf of CESA and the entire Preparation Institute College of Engineering, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Kaarthik sir for gracing us with your presence and sharing your work, findings, and opinions with us today. A big thank you for your efforts towards making us understand the different types of attacks, the types of tools used, the chain of trust, and small helpful tips to protect ourselves. It was a very interesting session and it gave a detailed insight into the world of security. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record a hearty thanks to PCAT management, Dr. G.V. Parishwat sir, Dr. K. Rajeshwari ma'am, Professor Rahul Patil sir, Professor Ganesh Deshmukh sir, and Team CESA for the perfect logistic support and guidance that they extended to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I had a lot of fun with the questions. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Kaarthik sir, special thanks. It was so enthusiastic, and I'm sure the students would have enjoyed. I too enjoyed it very much. Hope we'll meet sometimes.
Absolutely. I would love to meet sometime.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you, sir. Thank you, Kaarthik. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.